Well, hello. This is Faith Talks, which is a monthly podcast that looks at subjects and issues that are really relevant for the church around the world. And in this installment of Faith Talks, we are going to be talking with Katie Tucker, who is a director of a social enterprise called Treasure Seekers. So welcome, Katie. Great to have you along.
Hi.
And before we get into talking about what Treasure Seekers does, perhaps it'd be really good if you could just talk a little bit about yourself and give us some background as to who you are and where you come from.
Absolutely. So my name's Katie. I am one of the directors at Treasure Seekers based in Gloucester. And I've got a long history of working both for the church and around social issues as well. So many years ago, I started at the London Bible College as it was. And by the time I left, it was the London School of Theology, got a degree in theology, and then moved into working as an assistant pastor in a local church. After a short while, I then became involved in church planting into new build estates and other areas where there weren't any churches currently. And really during that time grew a passion for walking alongside people who were struggling with various social issues. And following having my children, I moved into a kind of wider church role. But then the idea for Treasure Seekers was born, and we started the organisation. And after about a year or two of that running, I then became employed full-time by the organisation.
Great. So that's wonderful. So you mentioned children. You've got 2 children.
2 children, 2 boys.
Amazing. Wonderful. So it's quite a juggling act, I'd imagine, working full-time for a social enterprise and being a mum.
Absolutely.
And a wife.
Always a juggling act, but hey, at least it's never boring.
Okay, so you're one of 3 directors of this social enterprise. Mm-hmm. So I was wondering if you could just tell us, but just start off by telling us what actually is a social enterprise. It's a phrase that maybe a lot of people haven't come across before. So what is a social enterprise?
A social enterprise is a company that is set up, but rather than being there to generate profit to go to, say, shareholders, it's there to generate profit to reinvest back into the aims of the organisation.
Okay.
So much like a charity, we've got aims and objectives and objects, I think they're called. And so every penny that the company generates has to be reinvested back into those aims. So
it's halfway between a company and a charity.
Yeah, absolutely. So Treasure Seekers, in fact, has the same articles of association as a charity. We stole kind of the template for a charity's articles because we wanted everything at Treasure Seekers to be about how can we invest the most to doing the most good.
Great, thank you. So as part of that overall description then, could you tell us what the particular social enterprise that you're involved in, which is called Treasure Seekers, tell us a bit about that, how it started, what its vision and values are, and how it's impacted upon the secular world.
Wow, that's a lot of questions all in one.
There you go.
So Treasure Seekers, it started about 12 years ago, and it was born out of a passion to help people who were falling through gaps in our local system. So at the time, the church had been running discos for adults with learning disabilities, and we were seeing hundreds of people come in during the week. And we started to hear stories of some of these adults with learning disabilities being actually quite broken by new rules that were coming in that removed people's benefits if they weren't working, but they were deemed capable of work.
Yeah.
So at the time, there was kind of training and support being offered.
Yeah.
But this consisted of an hours in the classroom training a week for 4 weeks. It was classed as a 4-week course. and then you're launched into the world of work for 16 hours a week. And we were seeing that actually a lot of people were really getting quite hurt by that approach. So my husband's got a background in retail management and also in care work. And the three directors came together and had an idea about setting up a shop that we could sell products to support financially the work. But the main goal was to support people with learning disabilities and mental health problems gain work experience in a real life setting. So that even if they could only cope with an hour a week to begin with, they could learn all the skills that they need to build some confidence, build up their time in the shop, and then into the workplace when they're ready. So that's what we did. We started trading on market stalls and then progressed to having a retail brick and mortar shop. And over the years, this desire to meet the needs of the people in our community has led us to set up all sorts of different things.
So just on the entering the workplace, you actually, I think I'm right in saying you gave help to the people with learning disabilities, mental health issues. You gave them help in terms of writing a CV.
Absolutely.
And I think you gave them practice in terms of what an interview might feel like. And so you supported them through that process?
Through the whole journey. I think it's whatever people needed support with. So for some, it was a case that they couldn't get a job because they didn't have experience. And so we were able to help them put together a CV with their work experience at Treasure Seekers on there. For others, it was the confidence of speaking out in an interview. For some, it's learning the skill to stop talking at an interview and to listen to what is being said. So it's all about meeting individual need. And I think that's something that we've carried over into everything we do at Treasure Seekers today. It's about saying, where are there needs in our community that aren't currently being met? And how can we or can we play a part in supporting that? So over the years, we've developed out of hours mental health drop-ins. We've developed a community coffee shop where it's a bit like Cheers. You know, everybody knows your name when you walk in. You've got a community around you. We've developed confidence building courses and all sorts of different things in order to meet the needs that aren't being met in Gloucester.
That's amazing. And just I know I'm fixating on it a bit, but did people manage to get employment as a result of this?
Yes,
I know
absolutely.
That's not the only goal of this, but it seems to be quite an important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had people gain employment. We've had people gain long-term volunteering positions. So whilst there's not the financial benefit, actually in terms of purpose and a sense of having something to do that is meaningful in life, it's huge. We've had people go on to further training and education, and we've had people actually just have confidence to leave the house, which they haven't done for years as a result of the programme.
And I actually think also Treasure Seekers itself has employed a number of people that you've helped through that process.
Absolutely. Well, actually, if we're training people up and they've got the skills and the passion and the vision, and we've spent time investing in them, and we know that they are really, really great staff to have. Why would we want anyone else to employ them? We'll have them.
Absolutely, yes. Have some confidence in your own process.
Absolutely.
Okay, so here's a kind of an important question, I guess. Why is it that Treasure Seekers has had such an impact? I came across just yesterday an award that you were given. It was a very heavy piece of glass, a whole chunk of glass, and it was an award given to you by Her Majesty the Queen, Queen Elizabeth. It's a Queen's Award for Excellence, and I noticed that there's several awards that Treasure Seekers has won. And And it caused me to think that a lot of faith-based initiatives are really worthy causes, but they don't really get necessarily taken seriously by statutory bodies like our National Health Service, or by local government, or even by national government, or in that particular case by the Queen of England. um, and yet Treasure Seekers has been, and it's not just about awards, it's about becoming a go-to organization that local organizations take seriously and want to interact with, and so on. Why Treasure Seekers? What is it about Treasure Seekers that makes it to be taken more seriously than many faith-based organizations?
So I think the question comes down to what we sensed our mission was when we first started. So we wanted to be an organisation that met need and that supported people who fell through the gaps. But we also felt that we wanted to be a change agent so that those gaps didn't exist in the first place. Because, why help put something back together, or someone back together who's broken, if we can stop them being broken in the first place by the system? And I think, given that that was our really clear vision when we first started, we sensed very early on that what we needed to be able to do was speak authoritatively and have influence within our local statutory sector partners, I guess. And so that is the likes of the NHS and the council and the police. And in order to be able to be have that authority and to be credible, we learned that we needed to speak the same language. And so we spent a lot of time looking at how can we make sure that what we're doing day to day, we're translating into language that our local partners can understand and can fully see the impact of. So interestingly, when I was at Bible college, my dissertation was on contextualization. Which
means?
Is so it's the process of taking a story or taking a concept that is rooted in one culture and telling it in another culture in a way that the meaning stays the same. So you might use, Jesus spoke in parables that were really rooted in the culture at the time. Maybe some of those parables don't land in the same way with people rooted in today's culture, in England, for example. So it's, how do we take the meaning and the message of those stories and talk about them in the language that people understand? And so we did that with Treasure Seekers, and we very clearly have our own vision and priorities. But we learned very quickly that we needed to make sure that we're speaking about those in a way that also highlights how they align to the public sector.
So I'm thinking also probably this has a lot to do with growing in credibility.
Absolutely.
How do you grow in credibility so that people have confidence to take you seriously?
And I think part of that is being faithful, being consistent, doing what you say you're going to do, showing care and support for people on an ongoing basis, being willing to go above and beyond. But I think there's also something about having integrity and being willing to stand up when things aren't right, regardless of reputation or how it will be perceived. Whilst we want a good relationship, we don't at any cost. And what we found over the years is that actually that grows your credibility as well. People respect that, you grow respect. And it's also about relationships. It's about finding those people in the local system who have a real heart and vision for what you're doing, and you grow those relationships.
Oh, that's That's really, I think that's really important, isn't it? To be seen, to be credible, to be speaking the right language, and to be delivering on what you're promising that you're going to deliver on. But obviously, Treasure Seekers has its roots in the Christian faith. It's deeply Christian in its values. But it was launched and that's highlighted by the fact it was launched by Kingfisher Church, Kingfisher family of churches, and so it's part of that overall mission to reach lost people and see them transformed, and become the best version of themselves, which is wonderful. But how do you balance your Christian ethos when you're working with secular bodies, with people of different faiths or of no faith at all, and particularly those secular bodies might view a Christian organization with some suspicion? How do you take your Christian faith and hold on to that, but also have credibility with organizations that, as I say, have very different values?
It's an interesting question, and one that we have wrestled with over the years. In fact, one of the reasons why we set up as a social enterprise in the first place was because locally the culture was slightly more hostile to church-based works, because it was seen as you were just trying to convert people rather than trying to serve people. And yet, what we want and what we have is Jesus really rooted at the center of the work at Treasure Seekers.
Yeah.
But we're not a traditional kind of missional organization in that our end goal in our organization's aims isn't conversion. That is what we want to see happen.
Yeah.
But what we want to do is introduce people to the values that the Bible talks about: love, acceptance, hope, the fact that life is meant to be lived to the full, and it's introducing people to those values so that when they're ready and when the Holy Spirit works in their lives, you've got something to hang the gospel on.
Yeah.
Most of the people that we have coming into Treasure Seekers have no concept of what a family is.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
when we say at church, what is family? Or we say that, the church is like a family.
Yeah.
There's nothing to hang that on.
Yeah.
So at Treasure Seekers, it's almost that pre missional stage of showing love, showing acceptance. For us, we see our responsibility as really praying for our community and praying that God does amazing things in their lives.
And then keeping the focus on issues that everyone can agree with.
Absolutely. And, I don't think there would be many people that would argue with loving people, loving your neighbour. I don't think there would be anyone who would argue that it is wrong that we have people sleeping in doorways in Gloucester when we have so much wealth in our country. And I think there are so many things that are really conducive to that kind of meeting of minds. That you can build relationship from. That there are times that it does become challenging.
And I want to talk about that. I want to ask you about that because. So I think you've been. You say you've been going for about 12 years now. So in those 12 years, there must have been a lot of lessons that you've learnt that can be applied to other people who would love to have the kind of impact on society that Treasure Seekers has. So if you could just kind of sum up some of the lessons that you've learned, maybe I was just talking about those challenges, but some of the lessons you've learned that you could share with folk who around the world who would be thinking, we would love to impact society. We would love to work with official bodies, with local councils, with governments and so on. We'd love to have that impact. What lessons have you learned that might be of help?
Oh, so many. I think every day is a learning journey where we get something wrong and we learn from it. I think one of the key lessons for me has been that it has to be a calling.
Yeah.
To work with the people that we do and the communities that we do, because it is it's an all-encompassing thing in order to see life change happen. When you want to work with people who have been incredibly broken over the years, you can't always switch off at 5 o'clock, because the level of rejection that produces, you can do more harm than good if you're not all in. And I think when it comes to how faith is expressed through that, it's deeply challenging when you can see people that your life will be transformed if you would only meet Jesus. But they're not asking that question. And so one of the biggest lessons I've learned is to pray again, pray that the Holy Spirit moves, and pray that we're given all that we need in order to give to others, and learn to trust in the fact that God is bigger than anything that we can do. What we're doing is a drop in the ocean compared to God's riches and how he can move in people.
And I think something you mentioned a bit earlier, and also I'm aware of more generally about treasure seekers, is to know when not to make alliances with other organizations. So having that strong sense of what your boundaries are, and when things conflict with your belief system and your what's the word I'm trying to find there? But your aims and your objectives as an organization, it's right to know when to walk away. So it's not all about the money.
No, absolutely not. It's people first.
Yeah.
One of our core values is people above processes.
Yeah.
And, we put people right at the center of what we're doing, and there have been times we've absolutely walked away from, significant amounts of money because it wasn't right for us. There's times we've walked away from partnerships because actually we don't share the same values as the organization we're partnering with. Or there are times that we've walked away because there is an unwillingness to change some of the root causes of issues, because actually it's a good money spinner.
Right. And I'm just thinking of one particular area that you're involved in, which I think it's a really challenging area, but such a great one, and that is an area called youth support. Youth support. Can you just tell us a little bit about that, because it kind of gives us a flavour of really the cutting edge that you're on. The real sort of, you're really on a battlefield here. What is that youth support?
So youth support is our out of hours youth mental health drop-in that we run here at Treasure Seekers in Gloucester City Centre. It runs from 5 o'clock till 9 o'clock, 365 days a year. And
what do you mean by youth?
So under 18s,
right?
It's youth.
Yeah.
So anyone up to 18 can come free of charge if they're struggling with their mental health. When we first started it, we envisioned kind of sending out flyers to schools and really advertising this youth support service. What actually happened was we started to get lots of young people who had hanging around the city centre, in trouble a lot, and we realised how much need there was
Mm.
in amongst the young people that we were getting.
Mm.
And we've never needed to advertise because they just keep coming. So we have about, I think it's about 700 visits a month to that youth support service.
Yeah.
And it's
Wow.
growing month on month.
Goodness me.
Something like 75% of young people who are coming are not white British, from all different ethnic backgrounds, and really reflective of the diversity that there is in our city.
Yeah.
So a whole lot of different experiences and challenges.
And what are you doing with them?
So it's simple. We're taking time to listen to them, to talk with them,
Right.
to have a chat about how they're doing whilst playing Xbox or having a game of pool or table tennis, or doing some craft activities. It's very simple and straightforward, the actual doing. What's challenging is navigating their life circumstances with them. So, you'll be sitting talking to some young people, realize that actually they're children in care, who have social workers. They've said some things that are maybe a little bit concerning that you need to talk to the social workers about. And it's the complexity of, the challenges that young people are facing. I mean, we have young people who come to us to debrief after episodes of self-harm that have landed them in hospital for periods of time, or tell us about overdoses that they've taken. We've had young people come in saying they've just taken an overdose, and we have to get them the appropriate medical care.
And these are all people under the age of 18?
All people under the age of 18.
Goodness me.
And
so, I mean, clearly, Treasure Seekers has grown a great deal. In fact, I was looking on your website just before this. The name of the website is
kftseekers.org.uk. Thanks for the plug.
And on your website, you're saying that you now work with over 2,000 people throughout this particular city. And that's a phenomenal number of people, absolutely phenomenal. In fact, I think you've got something like 70 members of staff, something like that, and hundreds of volunteers as well. So I'm thinking that you're pretty much arrived now. There's not a lot of other places you can go or develop. So would you say you've hit your ceiling? Would you say, Treasure Seekers is now in maintenance mode? Have you got to where you were first heading towards 12 years ago, or can you keep growing?
Well, actually, those figures on the website are a little bit out of date. We're reaching about 3,000 people a week at the moment, which is incredible.
Goodness.
But we've purposefully not updated the website because we don't want the focus to be on numbers necessarily.
And yet here we are.
And yet here we are. But for us, growth isn't about numerical growth and how many people we can reach. It's about how much need can we meet. And to be honest, the first thing we want to be able to do is to not exist, because we've changed so many of the things that are going wrong in our local system that are causing people to be hurt and broken. That actually we've made such a difference that we can just keep the coffee shop open as a nice place to chat with friends.
Yes.
That's the dream. That's the end goal. But I think we will always find that we are growing and changing because we're responding to the needs coming in our community. One of, going back to an earlier question about lessons learned, is we've also learned when to stop doing things when actually the need is no longer there. And so in 10 years' time, what we're doing might be different to what we are now, but it will be meeting a need. And I think, it's amazing seeing how many people we're able to walk alongside. So our adult mental health drop-in, we have about 14,000 visitors a year to.
Which is that went under the radar. 14,000 visits a year for you. And adult is anything over 18.
Anything over 18, which is, and again, that's growing as well. And on one sense, you look at that and think, wow, it's growing month on month with the number of people that are coming through. In another, I think that's 14,000 times people in Gloucester have come in and said, I'm not okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so for me, the challenge is always, well, how do we get underneath what has happened and how can we stop that from happening in the first place as much as we're able? And that is my dream and my goal and where I want to see Treasure Seekers go.
Yeah, because
in
I
the
was
next
going
10
to
years.
ask, where are you developing? But I'm guessing you really just answered that. But are there any specific areas, new areas that you're getting into?
So we are doing all sorts of different things, such as looking at how we can help support people that are homeless
Right.
more and more, but not just providing practical relief, getting involved in conversations around what are some of the barriers to people that are currently homeless accessing safe accommodation.
Yeah.
And how can we use the learning and the stories of people that we've gathered to demonstrate how small changes in the system could lead to fewer people being on the streets.
And I think it's true. Sorry to interrupt you there, but I think it's true to say that you've been fairly recently invited to send teams into the local hospital.
I was just about to say that, and we
there you
absolutely are. So, up until the end of March this year, we will have members of staff from Treasure Seekers based in the emergency department at our local hospital 7 nights a week, every single night until the end of March, to give people emotional support who are attending maybe because they've self-harmed or there's drug use or there's maybe been a suicide attempt. And we can get to know them, walk alongside them, and invite them to come and be a part of our community here. Or for people who just are very, very anxious about being in a hospital environment, helping
How's
them
that
to.
been going? You've been running that for, I think, a few months now?
We've been running it for, about 3 months now. So initially we had funding to do it for a 10-week test. A few weeks into the 10-week test, it became apparent that actually there's something really here. We're able to really support people, and that was extended to the end of March. What's been exciting is to see people that we've met probably on one of the worst days of their life in the hospital, and then coming and starting to become a part of the community here at Treasure Seekers, and seeing the joy and the just the hope that it offers.
Yeah. Did you have any idea that Treasure Seekers would become what it is today, 12 years ago?
Absolutely not. I don't know what we expected 12 years ago. We were just had this idea and thought, let's go for it. I have to say that the pressure and the weight of running a much larger organization isn't what I would have necessarily signed up for 12 years ago. It's funny how you get there by degrees, and you suddenly realize that everything now is much, much bigger. But I wouldn't have it any other way. It's been amazing to see what God's done. And it's amazing to hear stories of how people's lives have been changed. What's great now is some of the people that we initially started working with, so some of the young people who initially helped set up our what is now our coffee shop.
Right.
About 10 years ago, 9 years ago. Those young people are now young adults, some of whom have children, and they come back and visit and bring their children and introduce them to the staff, and tell us stories of what they're now doing with their lives. And there's amazing stories of all sorts of different things that these young people, or these kids at the time, were up to. And that is just such an encouragement to see how far we've come and to see what God's done.
Well, it sounds amazing. And I think one of the key phrases you've just used is you just do it. That's a very important thing, that you can hear a call from God, you can talk about a call from God, you can worry about a call from God, but what actually needs to happen, I guess, is you just take the first step.
One of the things that keeps me going is it's really cheesy, really corny, so you have to bear with me, but it's the picture of a ship and the thought that a ship can only be steered once it's moving. And before every step, we pray that if it's the wrong step, if we're moving in the wrong direction, for God to redirect us. But in order for him to do that, we've actually got to be moving.
Yeah.
And so it's just doing the next thing that God's told you to do and leaving him to the rest.
That all sounds very inspiring. Katie Tucker, thank you very much for talking with us on Faith Talks. And if people would like to know more about Treasure Seekers, they can go to your website. Absolutely. It's got a very memorable address, which I've just going to ask you to repeat.
So it's kftseekers.org.uk.
Wonderful. Katie, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.